And it's really that idea. It starts with shifting the conversation again. So that the traditional notions of classroom cool means that I need a shtick or a gimmick that I got to show up and put on a show. Which we can all do. But
Mhm.
but to really think about cool in the sense of kids trust me, kids believe in me. And one of the things that we know about basic relationship building is you trust people who listen to you and you trust people who act on what they hear. And so if I make a demonstrative effort to hear kids and then to craft the kinds of classroom experiences that reflect what I've heard, kids trust me more. And so if you tell me, like I had a conversation with a kid the other day. Actually, I was talking to him about like how he's going to spend his summer, and he happened to mention that he was going to be traveling to a Pokemon tournament to play Pokemon cards. I thought that was a really cool way to spend your summer. So I asked him a few questions
Sure.
about it. And then the next day, I was wrapping up some things in science. And when I used the term evolution, I just kind of happened to drop in the appositive phrase like Pokemon. And that kid sat up straight and so I'm talking about evolution. I make a reference to Pokemon just because he told me the day before, and like in that moment, in his eyes, what I could see is like this guy hears me. And so do I have to know how to name all 150 original Pokemon? No. Do I have to know how to play the card game? No. But do I have to listen to a kid when they talk about what's important to them and what they value? Absolutely. And then when I find little ways to connect what I'm doing every day to what they value, that's the win.
Yeah, and you talk in the book too
Yeah,
about building spaces to make that happen as well. As
absolutely.
in, like you talk about, it doesn't have to be formal; it could be informal. Could you talk a little bit about this idea of the classroom meeting?
Certainly, like I am always meeting with kids, in the way that, I learned this from, I had a physician that she would talk to me, I'd go to see her, about every year for my annual checkup. And she would come get me in the waiting room and we would chat. She was like, "Oh, what are you doing there? I see you're wearing a soccer jersey. Have you played any good games lately?" And she would talk to me about like, like my shoes and like just, small talk, I thought. But then
Hmm.
we would go back to the exam room and she would say things like, "Okay, so you played 3 soccer games in the last week." And I'm like, "How did you know that?" And she's like, "Well, when you're talking about your jersey, you happened to mention that you were in a game on Thursday." And so she would have these ways of like getting information from me, but in these really kind of, to use the term, laid back and cool ways where I had no idea she was assessing, my physical health by making small talk. And I remember being so envious of how much information she was able to collect about me in a short amount of time. And so I stole that from her. And I was like, I want to be able to do that with kids in my classroom. Like, I want to be able to make small talk that teaches me about kids and their lives, and that I could use and I could act on it. That I receive. She's probably the best physician I've ever had in my life because everything I said like mattered to her and she used it to her advantage in terms of my physical care. And so I would just really wanted to ask the question, how could I be that as a teacher? How could I listen to them in a way where everything they say like becomes part of how I take good intellectual care of them? And so meetings, the classroom meetings are just a really informal way to do that. That I'll bring up topics just because I want to hear kids' responses to them. And I want to hear kind of their disposition, and I want to see if they get excited when they talk about that thing, or I want to see if they get scared or angry when they talk about that thing, because that informs like what I can bring into the classroom. That informs how I can teach.